Læsø Trindle, in the northern part of Kattegat, is part of a bigger Natura 2000 area, nominated to protect the boulder reefs of the area. Unfortunately, a lot of the reefs have disappeared throughout the last century due to exploitation of the boulders. This is why the Danish Nature Agency, with support from Life Nature, has conducted the first big cavernous boulder reef restoration project in Europe on Læsø Trindle, the Blue Reef Project. Offshore cavernous boulder reefs in shallow waters hold a very high biodiversity and are a subtype of the so-called 1170 reef habitat, according to the EU Habitats Directive. Unfortunately, such reefs are very rare in most of the European waters. Denmark used to have quite a few cavernous boulder reefs, but throughout the 20th century, the boulders have been exploited extensively in order to use them for harbour constructions and sea defences. It's estimated that approximately 3,400 hectares of reef have been excavated, and hereby a substantial part of the boulder reef has been removed and left the sea floor almost naked, and with very little life. Throughout Europe, there is a wish to establish or re-establish cavernous reefs, as that would hopefully result in a healthier marine ecosystem in the specific areas. These reefs are known to have very high biological diversity and production compared to other habitat types, and they can function as feeding area for many species of fish, shellfish and marine mammals. In 2006, Læsø Trindle in Kattegat was chosen as the first site in Denmark to re-establish a cavernous boulder reef.
Netop den her naturtype, som vi kalder 1170, de her stenrev, de er altså meget, meget vigtige, fordi de der små huller, som de har, de udgør et hjem for mange forskellige typer dyr, der ellers ikke vil findes der, hvis vi ikke har de rev, for eksempel hummer. Det andet, der er vigtigt med de her rev, er, at de egentlig får bunden til at komme op mod lyset. Og det er lyset, der giver alt livet i havet, fordi du får planter til at vokse, når du har lys. Så at du har bunden komme tættere op på lyset med de her rev, gør, at du får mere planteproduktion, og på den måde får du også mere mad til de fisk og andre organismer, som måske ikke skal have en rev til et liv, men de får en masse at spise, når de kommer til reven. Så den er faktisk utrolig vigtig for naturen i det her område.
And a boulder reef full of life can also function as a stepping stone in the Blue Corridor, linking sites in the Natura 2000 network.
Det her stenrev, det er et område eller en type område, som Danmark egentlig har forpligtet sig til at beskytte. Så ved at lave sådan et projekt som Blue Reef-projekt, så er vi faktisk ved at leve op til vores EU-forpligtelser.
And finally, the Blue Reef Project is also a pilot project which will help make a code of conduct for how to best re-establish such reefs.
Det er ikke kun et spørgsmål om at smide nogle klodser ud i havet og så glemme dem. Den er faktisk en procedur, som vi er nødt til at lære at gøre rigtigt.
In 2008, 4.5 hectares of reef was built in water depths ranging from 6 to 10 meters. A reef with plenty of caves and holes, just like the original reef. Today we're writing 2012. It's 4 years after the first boulder was placed, and it's time to take a closer look at how life on the reef has evolved. But before lifting the curtain to whether the reef has evolved successfully, let's start at the beginning. Rebuilding a reef is a big construction work. And since the reef on Les Trindle is also to be used as a demonstration project for further European aquatic nature restoration projects, the rebuilding has involved extensive surveys of the flora and fauna before and after the re-establishing. This is to scientifically document the change and evolve a best practice for further reef restorations and constructions. The major steps in the process can be listed as follows. First, a geological survey of the seafloor to check the solidity. Second, modelling of the reef structure. Third, biological analysis of the flora and fauna in the area before restoration. Fourth, the actual quarry of the boulders. Fifth, the physical construction of the reef. Sixth, biological analysis of the flora and fauna 4 years after the restoration. Now let's step back to 2007 to follow the first preparations for the reconstruction, the geological survey. A drilling vessel heads out for Les Trindle to the spot of the rebuilding. It's crucial for successful reconstruction that the subsurface is stable enough to carry the many tons of boulders. To test the seabed and find the exact spot to build the reef, an investigation of the sediment in the project area is needed. The drilling vessel brings equipment to drill 10 meters into the seafloor. Samples are brought back on deck and carefully packed and marked with exact place and depth. Altogether, 10 sediment samples are collected from all over the project area. The consistence of the sediment reveals whether the subsurface is stable enough to carry 86,000 tons of boulders to be placed according to the plan. Also, the seabed is checked with an echo sounder. This is to ensure that there are no pockets of soft organic sediment hiding beneath the seafloor, which has escaped the drill. Both the sediment samples and the echo sound survey reveal that the seabed of the Blue Reef project area at Les Trindle is positively strong enough to carry the reef. The next task is then to get engineers to model the reef. This process should both demonstrate whether the planned size of the boulder is big enough not to be washed away during a storm, and to test whether there could be any negative consequences to the nearby areas caused by changed currents, wave conditions and so forth.
Jamen, du kan se her.
Den behøver ikke at være i hele længden, den kan godt bare være her. Eller sådan.
Okay.
This process can be investigated by building a miniature copy of the reef in a test hall. The essential idea is to find the optimal boulder size.
Hvis de sten, som man bruger til at bygge revet af, er for små, så vil de i en kraftig stormsituation, så vil revet blive eroderet, ændre form og blive nedbrudt simpelthen. Men der kan også ske det, som måske er lige så vigtigt, at man kommer til at overdimensionere de her sten, og det er for dyrt, og så kunne man have brugt penge bedre på flere sten for eksempel. Så det er en optimeringsproces, og sørge for, at de er store nok til, at revet bliver liggende, men på samme tid, så vil man også gerne bruge pengene bedst muligt.
But most of the modelling of the reef is done on a computer. Both the hydrography and the data on the present current and wave conditions are taken into account. And the planned reef is now ready for tests involving forces from waves and currents characteristic of the recurring storms in the area. The results from the computer model are used to define exactly which boulder sizes to choose, and also the computer model can reveal the consequences for the immediate surroundings.
Altså effekten af, at man bygger de her rev, er så vidt vi kan se med vores beregninger, meget lokal. Det vil sige, at det er begrænset til et område, som er meget tæt på de nye strukturer.
The first steps towards the restoration have now been taken. The seafloor can actually carry the load. The boulder size has been determined, and the new reef will have no negative consequences for the surrounding environment, including the Natura 2000 habitats and species. But before dumping the boulders, it's necessary to make a very thorough assessment of the flora and fauna in the project area. This pre-status of the reef is to be used as a baseline study in order to determine how plant and animal life will evolve in the rebuilt reef.
Hvis det her havde været et rigtigt stenrev med store, stabile sten, så havde der været en helt anden tangskov dernede. Nu var det sådan lidt spredte planter, der stod rundt omkring. Og så var der enkelte sten med meget flot algevegetation på, men de stod sådan lidt spredt rundt omkring. Så det kunne være bedre.
The biological survey is conducted according to national and international standardized procedures, and it's comprised of, first, monitoring the flora in the area, number of seaweed species, biomass of seaweed, area of the bottom covered, and secondly, monitoring fauna in the area, number of different species, number of each species, biomass of fauna, investigating feeding behavior in indicator species throughout the project area. The monitoring was done by different methods. Suction sampling was used to collect fauna and flora from areas of 0.1 square meters spread out in the project area. The samples are studied in the lab to carefully identify and count every single species and individual.
Lige nu er det en lang, sej proces med at få trillet alle de her sten til side og fundet de få dyr, som er inde imellem.
Her er i hvert fald pakket ind med små babyblåmuslinger.
Der er faktisk forbløffende få dyr. Og det håber vi jo på bliver bedre, når vi får lagt de store sten ud. For lige så snart der kommer tangplanter, så kommer der mange flere krebsdyr og polykater eller orme.
These pictures show examples of some of the invertebrates collected and counted. Photographs and hand sampling are also used to gather and identify mainly the seaweed species, but also animals are recorded using this method. Nets with different mesh sizes are used to catch fish. The fish caught are used to both estimate the number of species as well as the relative change in total fish biomass in the area. To quantify the possible change in food web dynamics with the establishment of the reef, a stomach content analysis is conducted on two dominating fish species, gold-sinny wrasse and cod.
Så vil sige, den her den har så spist 3 taskekrabber og 2 troldhummer.
This is to determine whether these fish primarily forage in the project area or whether they find their food elsewhere. In 2011 and 12, acoustic telemetry transmitters are implanted into cod and attached to lobster, and the animals are released in the project area.
Torskene, de er blevet fået indopereret dem i buhulen. Der ligger de godt beskyttet inde i selve fisken der. Mens hummerne, der har vi lagt dem på det selve kloen. På kloen af hummeren og sat den fast med noget gummibånd og nogle strips og sådan noget, så sidder den fint der på siden af den. Og det skulle virke ganske udmærket.
For 12 months, the receivers record where the animals are every third minute. All in all, the seafloor in the project area turns out to be quite naked and does not comprise a big biomass. The seaweed species are either fast-growing species or very small and young perennial species. The seafloor fauna is small and consists mostly of bryozoans and young blue mussels. As for fish, there are hardly any commercial species like cod and lobster on the remains of the reef. And the total biomass is remarkably low, probably because of the lack of big stable boulders for the plants to grow on and the lack of caves and voids for the animals to hide in. This was the situation 4 years ago in 2008, when the boulders were ready to be dumped in the ocean. And now, ready, steady, go find boulders. Since Denmark has no extensive rocky ground, the boulders for the reef have to be found in its mountain-rich neighbouring country, Norway.
I dag skal vi sprenge 35 000 tonn, og da benytter vi ca. 8 000 kilo med sprengstoff. Og sprengstoffet vi benytter, det et flytende sprengstoff som kalles slurrit.
It's very important that the boulders do not quarry in nice smooth lumps, but have a lot of different shapes and bumpy surfaces. This allows for lots of caves and voids to create. The boulders chosen are granite, likely to resemble the reef material which constituted the original reef, and which can also cope with the extreme wear and tear a reef in such shallow water is exposed to. Altogether, 86,000 tons of big chunks of granite boulder are then quarried on Kragerø in southern Norway.